Hi, all, and welcome to the first episode of the Alchemy of Archetypes podcast. And so, my goal with this season, this first season, is to really lay the foundations of why the Alchemy of Archetypes, why I call them archetypes, and then also to gently walk through each of the 5 archetypes and really just give you a foundation for why I decided to go down this road, why this fascination, why this way of being in my world. So let's dig right in. First of all, let's just talk about the word archetypes, which is, as you guys have seen me probably talk about in my Instagram feeds, or if you're part of our Mighty Network community, you've heard me talk about the word archetypes. It happens to be the subject of the book I'm working on, and I want to just kind of define it for those of you that may be new to me, or maybe have never really heard me define where that came from and what I'm talking about. So the word archetypes is a made-up word, and because that's how I do. I like to make up things like words, not facts. I like to be clear on my facts. But the word archetypes is a blend of the alchemy of archetypes, if you hadn't figured that out already. You geniuses, you little sleuths figuring it all out. But it happened one day when a good friend of mine, who has also helped me with some of my business stuff in the past, we're having a conversation. And in my hurriedness to get the Alchemy of Archetypes out for her, I said archetypes, and it just stuck, and it just felt like it was the best description of what I wanted to be talking about and the message that I'm trying to get into the world, which is basically, if we look at the two words, alchemy, defining alchemy, definitely from the perspective of the history of alchemy, is really about metals and precious metals. Also, we can find the history of alchemy in trying to find that fountain of youth, right? That precious vitality, and also it really is about, even in the metals, it's about a process that happens that takes us from one way of something being in the world, one metal, one emotional state, whatever it is, and then through some sort of transformation, through some sort of process, it turns into something completely new that cannot be undone. It's true transformation, right? It's turning lead into gold. And the reason why I feel like that's really important is because I feel like in the journey of deep healing, true healing, we really do need that alchemical moment where we have done the work enough, either the energy work, the emotional work, the mental work, the spiritual work, enough for us to take that pain point that we were working with, whatever it was, wherever it was showing, on whatever level, and turning it into some sort of power, turning it into some sort of gift, so that we can recycle what we no longer need, and we can really move forward in a sustainable way, because it's truly transformed. And in the realm of healing, so if you don't know my background, if you're just new to me, or if you have never really known, I come from a lot of different modalities. I am a modality junkie, and I love to learn. I am a #lifelong learner, and actually, I will talk about that some over this season. That's part of my one line in my human design, is the investigator. And so I have a lot of training and a lot of background in energy medicine, in healing modalities, in applied neurology, and which comes out of applied physiology, which comes out of applied kinesiology. And so I really have taken a lot of perspective of learning the healing realm, and then also combining that with, I am currently in the master's and doctorate program at Quantum University, getting my doctorate in natural medicine. But in that program, it's from the perspective of energy medicine, and what he would call pro-consciousness medicine. And I've done my bachelor's in holistic health. So I also have kind of that, some of that, that kind of education, academia base, I would say, with that as well. And then my own just self-studies, right? So my own seeking, my own wanting to know. I've taken some deep dives into astrology, into human design, and adding those on top of, and then quantum human design with Karen Curry Parker, and adding those on top of this work in energy medicine. And as well as following some thought leaders, right? So for me, those thought leaders are definitely are heavy hitters, people like Joe Dispenza and Lynn McTaggart and Brene Brown, and then also Wayne Dyer, right? So some of those bigger those bigger thought leaders in our field, and in this modern new thought field. And so what I've seen, so all of that is to say, this knowledge base, which, again, my one line makes me really want to gather as much as I can. But what it really brought me was this kind of understanding that one of the things that I felt like was really happening in the healing realm in particular was that a lot of people were practicing what I would call restorative energy work, meaning, and this is true really of like Reiki and even acupuncture, meaning that when you go in for your session, the point of the session, the goal of the session is to restore harmony and balance in the energetic system of the body so that the body can bring itself into balance and then therefore heal. It's really critical that we have this level of healing, that we have the access to restorative work. It helps us get back in our body. It helps us get back to center so that we can do the deeper work. But what I found was really missing, and really became the center point of my own work in the world, was that people weren't, when we're doing that kind of restorative work, when we're doing that restorative energy work, we're not necessarily helping our clients, A, be part of the process, and B, go deeper into the deeper meanings behind what is happening so that they can really unpack it, take responsibility, take ownership, but also make the space for that transformation, that transformative work. And so what I would find was that I was having clients that were feeling better after sessions, but they were finding themselves back in the same ruts, the same patterns, the same emotional waves. And they weren't able with just the restorative work to name the deeper patterns, to name the deeper pain points that might be causing some of those problems in the first place. And so it was kind of like we were just consistently putting a Band-Aid on it and saying, here, I hope this feels better. Now, sometimes I want to say, it's not completely like that all the time with restorative work. There is definitely the space where restorative work creates such harmony in the body that there's this spontaneous healing, this big shift in energy, which allows the body to really take that bigger step, allows the body to really heal in a much deeper and bigger way. And we always hold space for those sessions, right? Where something just really lands. But in my studies and my background, one of the things that I learned really early on in my work at Quantum University is the concept of the aha moment translated to healing. We've all heard of the aha moment, this kind of awakening, this shifting of perception that allows us to see something. And I think the aha moment itself is an alchemical process, right? It is, we were moving through the world with a certain filter, and then something catches our attention and it makes us question our own self, our own thoughts, our own emotions, our own filter in some kind of way. And then once that thing has been questioned, it can never really be unseen. Once we see something in a new way, we really can't unsee it that way. Now we know that there's this other way that it could be. And so the aha moment itself has quite an impact when we look at it from a healing perspective. But in my studies, one of the things that we dug into early on with Dr. Amit Goswami, and if you haven't heard of him, he is a physicist, a nuclear physicist, and then a quantum physicist, and he really has helped us understand the medicine of quantum energy, quantum science, and connected it to the, because these are ancient wisdoms that when we look at quantum physics in the current languaging around healing, we're really using it to explain things that were ancient healing techniques. The Chinese medicine system, the Ayurvedic medicine systems, those things all knew these things, and they never really got separated out from their medical models, but they did get separated out from our medical model. And that is the idea that in order for us to heal holistically, then we have to look at things on what he calls the 5 bodies of consciousness. So the first of the 5 bodies being what he would call the bliss body. We could also call that the all oneness, the place in quantum physics that is the 0 point energy. It's the energy that is there when there is no other energy, the energy that connects all things. We would call that dark matter in science, in some ways, right? But in spirituality, we would call that source. We would call that universal love. And then in spiritual languaging, you might refer to that as God. You might refer to that as Atman. There's lots of different languaging in which you might refer to this energy. But what we know is that there is an energy that is kind of the fabric of our reality, of all things, and it's all connected. And then that's really what quantum physics goes into, is really trying to explain that connection, explain what's going on, how all those things are interrelated, how they affect each other. And you can go literally down the wormhole. Look what I did there. Yeah. So there's this understanding that there is a something that is an energy that is bigger than us. And then as we filter into this human form, as we go from this all one energy and we become something physical, right? We manifest in the physical realm. Then we go first through a realm that we would call the supramental level. At the supramental level, this is the realm of the archetypes, and what my whole work and this whole season will really be kind of defining is it's the unconscious filters, perspectives, attitudes that we come into the world with. So this is the realm of those, when we look at, let's say, astrology. So again, we're looking at the archetypal realm. When we look at the supramental level, then at that moment of birth, if you follow astrology or even human design is also, and gene keys are based on the same concept, is that there's a certain energy, the neutrino streams of the different stars and planets in the galaxy illuminate particular personality traits. That's what I'm looking for, that are just yours, right? And they are what make up your kind of unconscious cosmic thumbprint, who you're the blueprint of who you're here to be in this realm, in this physical life that you're about to be having, right? And so at that level, we have these archetypes, and then the archetypes guide how we think, and then, as we know, so our thinking perceptions and things like that come through the mind, that's all connected to, once we start thinking, then we also are moving energy in the brain. We know that the body is physical, it's made of cells, it's chemical, it's got chemistry, and it's electrical. We need all 3 of those things to be animated humans in this world moving around. And so when you have a thought, it has this storm of energy that moves in your head and in your body, and that is that energy moving we call emotion, energy in motion. And then also we that will land in the body as a feeling. So we talk about the mind-body connection as if the mind and the body were disconnected, and that there's this like channel between the two. But the truth is, from quantum physics, it's all one thing. It's this collapse event where we're part of this energy field, and then we go from being the light and the energy of the field to being particle. And in order to do that, we collapse the entire story of that at one time. And what that means is that you can't really have an emotion without having a thought and a feeling and a physiology that goes with it. You can't really have a perception without having a thought and emotion, a feeling, and the cells that go with it, right? It's all connected. It all happens together. And so then you have this thought, it moves emotion in a certain way. You have this emotion in your field going on. That energy moves. When we look at energy movement, we look at the chakras, we look at the meridians, right? There's defined areas that we know exist where that energy moves. And then we look at the physical level where we literally become cells, right? So there's this connection all the way from that ancestral component. We would look at your DNA all the way up at that supramental level, and then see how that DNA is playing out through all those other levels throughout your lifetime, right? And that is the foundation. As we go through these episodes, we will talk more about those, the relationship between the energies of DNA and the gates and of human design, and which come from the I Ching, and just how energy moves and all of the things, right? So in our field, circling back in my field, in the healing field, what I found was that people were really, and we also learned this some, it's not just me finding this is what we were learning in class too, is that people were finding a lot of success working at the physical level. So when we look at it this way, we can see where all of the different medical models fit in, and definitely Western medicine, which is highly I have a lot of gratitude. I love the fact that we have Western medicine. I am someone who believes in complementary medicines, not necessarily calling them alternative. I like the idea that they work together, they fit together, and they fit together because there is a physical level in which we need to look at what's going on with the cells. We need to look at what's going on with bacteria and viruses, and we need to look at what's going on with a broken bone, right? We need to look at those things physically. And thank goodness for Western medicine that can do that. But we also need to look at things of what's going on emotionally. And thank goodness for Chinese medicine and Reiki and all the different modalities that look at the movement of energy as part of a holistic wellness. And then also we need to look at what's going on the mental level. What are the thoughts and the patterns of how we're thinking? How we know now that our thoughts are a direct correlation with our health. There's really too many studies in the world to debate that. And so now we're just studying how, not whether or not if. And so, a modality that looks at what we're thinking, how we're moving emotions, and how that shows up at the physical level. And that's really the juice of what we've seen when we look at complementary and or alternative medicines, is they're really playing in that realm of the mind-body connection, as we would say in common language. And so what I found is that that's true. Like when you help somebody with that mind-body connection, that's a really important work, right? Like the somatic therapies in the world, they are just fantastic for really helping us release old patterns that are stored in the body. We know those patterns are stored in the body. And doing that work really can open up the door for what I would call alchemical work. And it opens up the door through the aha moment. When we have an aha moment, it takes us from one of those lower levels. I'm saying lower, but it's not a hierarchy. It takes us from one of those like physical, emotional, or mental levels. And we have this aha moment that jumps us up. What Dr. Goswami would call the quantum leap from this way of being in the world, these thoughts, these beliefs, up to this, to that supramental level, to that archetypal level, where we shift our perception of how we see the world, how we see ourselves, how we see the situation. And it is my belief that that aha moment is the key to the alchemical process, because once you've switched the perception, once you've changed the core belief, once you've changed the narrative, once you've seen that you had the narrative, most of us are running around with narratives we don't even know we have, because so much of it is conditioned in early childhood. But that once you see that leap from this is what I thought it was to this whole new possibility, this you've gone up into this realm of possibility and you've shifted your perspective, well, that's going to start to download and shift a new thought pattern. There's no way to not have new thoughts around that, new ways of seeing the world, remembering that all of our senses are part of our neurology. So a new way that we see the world physically with our eyes, or with the mental perceptions of what's happening, or how we feel about the world, or even what's going on in our physical body. And so that jump from what I thought I knew to this new understanding, that's really the door into our alchemical process. And the alchemical process then takes us deeper. It takes us deeper into what the narrative was there. What was I already telling myself? And how am I seeing that very differently now? And I think it is part of, how do I want to say that? I think it is part of the narrative that we're not really talking a lot about, is that we do need to have this, we need restorative work. We need to work with the mind body. We need to do somatic work. We need to do even, in my work, and what I teach a lot around like kind of combining all of these things, getting the brain waves and the heart in cohesion together, looking at the parts of us that hold different narratives, finding those emotions in the body, right? All of that mind-body connection is really important. But I also want to take my clients into that alchemical moment where we can really transform that narrative into something new. And so I think that's one of the things that we don't often see in the healing modality realm. So again, I'm going back, I'm coming from that healing place, coming from that healing modality background. There's kind of a sense of it. It still kind of matches a medical model of like, you have a pain point of some sort. It could be on the physical level, the emotional level, or the mental level, or even the spiritual level. You've brought it to me as the healer, and I'm going to restore the energy so that your body can find harmony and heal itself. And I think that those are important roles for us to play as healers in the world. Sometimes we cannot, when we're having our own journey, right? Sometimes we cannot get ourselves out of our narrative, out of our spin, and we need help getting that support. But once we have restored that energy, I think it's important that we go deeper. We find out the whole narrative. We work from that aha moment. We help our clients get to that aha moment. We go beyond the mind-body connection and all the way into that supramental level, and begin to reset the blueprint, begin to change the blueprint of the narrative of the association with our DNA, so that we have different thoughts, we have different patterns. And as we go through these podcasts, episodes together, or these videos that you might be watching, we really begin to look at like the realm of those genes as they relate to the I Ching or human design and things like that. So alchemy then, right? Coming all the way back. So we kind of talked about both of them and all of that, but alchemy is really that next level. It's where I'm shifting my whole perspective. And when I do that, it's such a big shift. It's such that quantum leap of awareness that it can never go back. Now I see the whole picture. I see the template, my thoughts, my beliefs, my attitudes, things I brought in, that's the level where I might have brought it in with me. If you believe in karmic energy, ancestral energy, if you believe in past lives, then that's where you brought that in. If you don't, then that you brought it in at the gene level, you brought it in at the supramental level of the genes. And then it becomes who all the way through the thoughts and the physicality and the chemistry and all things into a physical being. I think that's mostly what I wanted to kind of lay down in this episode. Because it naturally then answers the second question, is then why archetypes? Because archetypes are this realm of this unconscious filter of on the individual level, it's the template of our personality that we get as we come into this world. And there is also the archetypes at the unconscious collective level, like the whole of humanity has archetypes. That's what Carl Jung's work is based in. And then we see that play out in every great narrative that's ever been made into books and movies, like Harry Potter and like Star Wars. We have all these archetypes playing out this big story. This is Joseph Campbell's work, right? And so we really have to acknowledge, and so at that level, archetypes are things like the different zodiacs and the astrology and the Enneagram and every personality test you've ever taken and your element and 5 elements and your chart and human design, your specific gene keys and your hologenetic profile, right? So there's archetypes everywhere, and we see them in and we are all a mix of all of the archetypes. No one is ever just one archetype moving through the world. I mean, some of the greatest stories really deal with the idea that there is no good and there is no bad. There's no good archetype versus the bad archetype. We are a mix. We are this interesting, messy humanity of all the archetypes and how they play out and how they interact together. But it's at that level that we need to understand ourselves so that we can kind of get that bigger perspective. When we get bigger perspective, we get more into what we call the observer mode, where we can kind of back up from our own narrative, our own crazy story that we're playing out in our lives, and we can see it differently, right? We can get bigger. And when we get bigger than our problem and we're in our observer and we're in curiosity, then we have the potential to really actually make change. When we're living in the narrative, it's really hard. That's a condensed energy. It's really hard to make a change from there. So we get bigger than that. We get up into the archetype. What's the bigger story? What's the bigger template? What's the bigger belief system that's running here that could help me understand myself so that I can understand who I am? And then once I understand who I am, I can understand better how I relate to the people around me, my family, my coworkers. And then once I better relate to that, how can I better relate to the whole of all of humanity? Because we are all connected. And so that brings us back all the way around, as I like to do. So that is enough of me talking at you for this episode. Stay tuned. I'm going to start breaking down some of these concepts more for you. We'll look at all sorts of different archetypes. We'll look at all sorts of different types of alchemy. And hopefully this will help you on your own journey. So until next time, have a great one.